it didn't take long on Tuesday for me to understand Georgia's well on its way in terms of where Kirby Smart wants it to be. And here's why I can say that, okay? I've been covering this program for 20, 24 years. And when Kirby said this at the beginning of his press conference, he said, I thought we had more guys execute without the coaches on the field Saturday at the scrimmage and push through the heat, which is mentally tough. You have to be able to get through that to grow and get better. I'm pleased with where we are at coming out of camp. The beginning of that statement, he says, we are in a good spot in terms of physicality. They grinded. That's all you need to hear. Like, those are the two things you have got to have in college football. Well, in sports. And Georgia's got plenty of both. But to recognize it this early in the season, or Brooks Austin asked him this question about what he learned about fall camp. He didn't say, he didn't ask, is your team mentally tough? He didn't ask about the physicality of the team. He just asked him an open-ended question. Kirby gets, probably more open-ended questions than he should get, but this one gave him an opportunity to say kind of what he wanted to, and he went exactly, he touched on the two, I would say, most important things in a football program. In order, are you mentally tough? B, are you physically tough? Because if you're mentally tough, you're going to be physically tough. Being just going up and punching somebody in the face, that may be physically tough. It's not mentally tough. It's stupid is what it is. And so you have to have the ability to do both. We're talking about football here, y'all. We're talking about confronting someone physically, literally on every single play, particularly if you're a lineman. That's what this is. You're putting your hands on somebody else every single play. And listen, the weather has chilled out in Athens. It is not like it was. The beginning of camp was extremely hot for Georgia, 95 and above. It's cooled down significantly, okay? So that's part of that. They're getting a break with the weather. And the weather was something that people talked about to us a lot. It was mentioned a lot. And part of me is thinking, y'all, we've lived in the South for a long time. It's always hot. But it does kind of drive it home at the beginning of camp. But I think, all you have to do is watch the players at Georgia, look at them, and they don't have a physicality problem in terms of their physical being. They can get outworked. That happens in games. But it's really the mental toughness thing of this. I saw something about, I'm going to talk about this in the near future. I saw something that someone was talking about behind the scenes with Carson Beck coming into this season. These guys get it, man. I don't always talk like this. I have questions about this team, and I think there are questions about this team. But the beginning of this thing is looking the way that it should. Now, with that said, make sure you're signing up for our newsletter. A lot of people have been doing it lately. The link is right down below this microphone. So make sure you're doing that and take advantage of that. We've got 10-ish days until Georgia plays Clemson. So make sure you're taking advantage of that. The newsletter is well worth it. Tomorrow, we're going to have final feelings for this first weekend. We're going to have our picks in for this first weekend. Don't miss out on that. All that comes out through the newsletter. Yeah, we put it on social media. Twitter's dying. Facebook's not really reliable in many ways. Make sure you're on our newsletter. It's free. It comes to your inbox. And we own it. Nobody else owns it. It's us. So, I think I want to get back to this mental toughness aspect of it, because for folks who, if you're a fan, you've never really played sports, there's no shame in that, man. Like that there's nothing wrong with that. If you're younger, there's a lot of stuff that you've not yet gone through. You will know that mental toughness is probably the number one thing in sports. You think about Novak Djokovic being older, and I do not like him. He's a clown. There's a lot of things. He changed the way that he went into tennis. You talk about Rafael Nadal. I mean, these guys are just tough. Kobe Bryant, for sure. Kobe, Jordan. I mean, LeBron. Certainly at this stage, Steph Curry. You've got people who you have tremendous mental toughness. You have got to have that in sports. Tom Brady, for sure. There's no shortage of those guys. Stetson Bennett, 100% has got it, And I think people looked at him and discounted his physicality because he does have physical, limitations as it relates to his height. There's no question about that. That's about it to the limitations for him, because Stetson Bennett's got a live arm and can run like a deer. So what is so critical about this time at Georgia? There's a lot of things that are going right. And of course, you want to peak at the end of the season, not in August. All right? You don't want your best game to be, you go beat Clemson by 24. That's great, but that's not ideal, right? You want to beat Clemson by 24 in the national championship game. And we've seen Georgia beat someone by more than that in a national championship game. You want to peak at the end. And there's been, that is not a question at Georgia. I don't think it's a question at Ohio State. Doesn't mean they can't do it. That's a question. I think there's a lot of questions at Alabama, and they may have a lot of answers. It's a question at Texas, but for Georgia, can they finish? I mean, no, that is not a relevant question anymore at Georgia. So, can Kirby, we know he knows how to land the plane. This season, the takeoff seems to me like it's going to be a little bit easier. Now, the schedule's harder, but they are in better position. I wrote about this the other day. Georgia's as well positioned, sorry for repeating myself, for the start of this season in terms of injuries as I can recall in a while. When you think about in 21, Darnell was out and everybody was freaking out. Internally in the program, they knew JT Daniels had some issues. So talk about freaking out. I mean, that guy didn't play in their second game. In 22, I can't remember. I mean, I think pretty quick they had some bang-ups. But right now you're talking about Roderick Robinson. Perhaps Warren Brinson is hurt. He's going to play, though. So there are a lot of times in sports you got to get to the start gate. Don't be Paul Hewitt or don't overthink it. You've got the best players. Let them go play. There's no reason to just kind of go nuts here. Get this team to the opening gates, and unless something happens, and we're not going to see any more major scrimmages at Georgia. They are at the gate now. This Clemson game is ticking up a little, not a lot. I'm seeing more 14s than 13.5s. I'm not, whatever, everybody can smell what we can smell about Tech right now in this Florida State Tech game. If you got it at 11.5, you got some value. You got 1.5 value because that thing's going to dip down to 10 or maybe even 9.5. I don't trust Florida State right now. I don't trust Florida. I trust what I know of Tech more, and we'll just see how this progresses. But in terms of this mental toughness, I mean, again, the issue or not, are they good as players? Yeah, they're good as players. Are they ready to deal with an injury? Are they ready to hear news they don't want to hear? Are they ready to, get down in the game and come back? Well, the answer, we already know the answer to that. We saw them against Auburn last year. We saw them against South Carolina. They have the capability of doing that. They did that. It's not so much capability. It's just, this is who they are. So I think that was one of the most important moments this preseason. I don't want to go too big here. I mean, but for me, I'm not making too much of this. Again, I've done this for a while. I know how Kirby is. I feel like they know they're good. I don't know if they would say that. I am putting that on them. It looks like it. It feels like it. Smells like it. It's all, there's something going on. But it's August, right? That's not the same as December and January at all. I don't know if you can tell. But that, I think, was one of the biggest things. The 21 team was so old. They were such an old team. The 22 team was so explosive and good. The The 23 team, I think, had to figure a lot of stuff out. To just being straight, like looking back on the 23 season, they did not get out of the gates very good at all. They didn't. But then from Kentucky on, they were pretty hard to deal with. I mean, you had total blowout of Kentucky. They routined Vanderbilt. That wasn't unbelievable. It's probably Carson's worst game. And then they drilled the Gators. They come back and they win a fight with Missouri. They blow out Tennessee. They blow out Ole Miss. They routined Georgia Tech the same way that they routined Vanderbilt. It wasn't great. It was kind of a half, it was a stadium that was at least 70% Georgia folks, and they had their hands full at moments in the games because they weren't playing well, both those games. They lost to Alabama, and then they absolutely drilled Florida State. You're going to not play well sometimes, and you need to win. I mean, look, you're not going to play well. Like, the 4 years of college I played, I think I played what I thought was really well, like twice. And that was it. And that we played a lot of games, a lot of matches, a lot of games. And you just don't do it. Sometimes you just don't play well. It's a lot of times the opponent just doesn't mess up. Okay. They're the ones that are they get to make plays too. They get the ball sometimes. And sometimes problems happen. It starts raining. I never dealt with that, but you just are not in rhythm. Like something you had too good of a practice on. You had a Wednesday night game, and your Monday practice was just like too good. Like you played the game on Monday or something like that. That happens too. So I think if I were a Georgia fan after that press conference, I think that Georgia is in. I'm not just saying this. I mean, this is, you can tell that they are in really good shape coming into this thing, and it doesn't have anything to do with anybody else. I mean, I've not talked about Clemson. There's no reason to talk about Clemson as it relates to this topic because it just, these two are going to play. They could play again in theory. There's so many, you could have Georgia be the 3 seed, have to play an extra game, and then they meet Clemson, in the quarters. So there are no, I'm going to go through and explain the college football playoff for y'all pretty soon, but it does not necessarily make sense as it relates to, how they line this thing up. I'm still looking here. Yeah. So for all the graphics made about Ohio State catching Georgia by ESPN, that has, Ohio State has regressed backwards, which is not surprising. They should not be the betting favorite. Georgia should be, and they are. And, Oregon is about half the odds of Georgia. Texas a little bit less than half the odds. But, Ohio State's right on top of them. But it's going to be, if Georgia is what it looks like they are after that press conference from Kirby, then, y'all need to probably be getting ready for an expensive postseason that involves Atlanta. And remember, if you win the SEC championship game, you do not play, almost certainly, not 100%, but like 99.9%, you do not play in in Atlanta. So if you want to play in Atlanta, that means Georgia doesn't win the SEC in like 98 out of 100 scenarios. So just keep that part in mind. And is that unfair? I don't think so necessarily. I mean, I don't think so. I mean, LSU played a semifinal in Atlanta, blew the doors off of Oklahoma. That Georgia's blessed with having, Georgia's Georgia because of Atlanta. No offense to everybody else, but you can't have Georgia without Atlanta. I also recognize that Atlanta is not always Georgia, right? So that's another topic for another day. But that you've got the dome, it's world class and all this stuff, but you can drive to New Orleans. You can drive to Miami. I would not recommend. You can drive to New Orleans. You can drive to Miami. You can drive to Atlanta. These are all easy to get to places for Georgia fans. If you are UW or Penn State or whatever, you're not playing anything close to home in the quarterfinals. Like, it is not happening. So Georgia's still in good shape, but if they win the SEC championship, they're going to the Big Easy. They are not going to be playing in Atlanta that time. Now, there's going to be other years where the scenarios change. We're going to talk about that in a little bit in one of these next videos. Anyway, thanks for watching. Sign up for the newsletter.